Hi everyone! In today's video I want to share with you a couple of garden design tips to help you take your balcony gardening game up a notch and to make your space look a little less like an apartment balcony and a little more like a small urban garden where you can relax, unwind and forget for a moment that you're in the city center. So garden design is not only about the choice of ornamental plants and how to pick the right plant for the right space, it also involves a couple of really cool principles that, if followed, will help you create a very harmonious and very cohesive garden. So let me share with you a couple of those principles and how can you apply them in a balcony garden situation. The first tip is figure out your seating area, because no matter how large or small your garden is, you need a seating area, whether that be a table and chairs or just a small bistro setup or a bench or just a comfy armchair. You need a space where you can actually sit down and enjoy the hard work that you put into your garden. And I've seen and spoke with many other balcony gardeners, who are very enthusiastic at the beginning, and I'm one of them, and they filled out the space completely with plants, but after a season or two they realize that there's just not simply enough space for them to enjoy that outdoor area. And the benefit of container gardening is that the plants can be moved. So just figure out where you want to have that sitting area or that dining nook, and then create your garden around it so that you can enjoy your outdoor space to its maximum potential. Tip number 2 is seasonal interest. Something I noticed about many balcony gardens is that they look absolutely stunning in summer, but then when summer comes to an end, so do the flowers. And then for the next half of the year, those balconies are usually pretty empty. And I personally think that the beauty, but also the challenge of container gardening, especially in a small space, is to grow plants for different seasons of interest and arranging them in a way that there is always something pretty to look at. So my advice would be, don't waste your money on annual flowers. Annual flowers are great, but they should not be the base of your garden. Instead, invest your money in small trees, small shrubs, perennial plants, evergreen plants, and combine those different groups of plants, selecting plants with a succession of seasonal highlights so that your garden actually evolves with the changing seasons. For spring interest in your garden, you can plant some smaller flowering trees and shrubs like magnolias or forsythias, and then you can plant a few spring flowering bulbs at the base of these plants. Crocus, muscari and daffodils, they all grow really well in containers and they come back from year to year. Then summer obviously brings an explosion of colors with all of those beautiful flowering shrubs like roses and hydrangeas and all of those beautiful perennials, and summer flowering bulbs and tubers like dahlias or begonias. In autumn, we can enjoy the changing colors of foliage of different trees and shrubs. Japanese maples and ginkgo biloba are some really great ideas for container gardens. Then planting a few late flowering perennials might be also a good idea. Asters and anemones would be great. And then winter garden can provide a ton of interest as well, from small frost-hardy evergreen plants through smaller conifers or winter flowering perennials like hellebores. But you can also add a ton of color and life to your winter garden without using plants at all. I published a video last year where I shared a few of my favorite ideas, so I will have it linked in the description box and at the end of this video if you want to check it out. Tip number 3 is the choice of color. Obviously, the choice of colors for your garden depends on your own personal preferences, but there are a few garden design principles on how to use and how to match different colors in your garden that can be very helpful if you want to create a very eye-pleasing display. So many garden designers use color wheel to create their plant schemes. So that color wheel is divided into primary, secondary and tertiary colors. Primary colors, obviously red, yellow and blue. Then secondary colors that are the result of mixing those primary colors are green, orange and purple. So how does it work in garden design? We say that the colors that are directly opposite to one another on the color wheel, like red and green and yellow and purple, they are complementary, because when used together in a garden scheme, they create a very vibrant and very eye-catching display. And then those colors that sit directly next to each other on the color wheel, like blue, pink and purple, they are considered harmonious, because when used together in a garden scheme, they create a very balanced and very harmonious display. So as I said before, it's really up to your preferences, but color has a huge impact on the overall vibe of your garden. Because for example, hot and vivid colors like reds, oranges and yellows, they create a sense of excitement and vibrancy, and we usually associate those colors with like hot and tropical spots. So they are best planted on a sunny balcony because they tend to look a little bit out of place in the shade, and also those darker, more saturated colors also tend to visually disappear in the shade. And on the contrary, those more delicate hues, those more muted colors like muted grays and pale pinks and whites and blue, green colors, they bring a sense of tranquility, and they are usually more associated with shady gardens, because if they are planted in full direct sunlight, those pale colors tend to kind of look washed out. Okay, garden design tip number 4 is repetition and cohesiveness. You know, when space is limited, it's very easy to feel tempted to plant as many different plants as you possibly can. And while there's nothing wrong with that, if you want your garden to appear more harmonious, it's a good idea to create repetition. And you can do so by either repeating the same color throughout your garden, or just stick to one color scheme like we said before, and avoid mixing too many different colors at the same time to not create that kind of visual distraction. You can also repeat the same plant all throughout your garden. For example, I like to plant plants by threes, so I will have one plant and then I will repeat it several different times all throughout my garden to kind of link the whole space together. And then cohesiveness is where it all kind of clicks together. So for example, you could pick a theme for your garden. Let's say you want a romantic cottage garden or an English garden or whatever that might be. Well, then pick cottage garden flowers and avoid, for example, planting tropical plants, and pick uniform containers, for example, all terracotta pots or all galvanized buckets, something that goes with that theme. And on the other hand, if you want something more vibrant, more exotic, more tropical, well, then pick tropical plants, pick colorful containers, you know, something that goes with that theme. Just generally avoid mixing different themes together and avoid mixing too many different things at the same time if you want to achieve that sense of harmony in your garden. And lastly, garden design tip number 5 is add vertical interest. That's something I completely ignored at the beginning of my balcony gardening journey, and the moment I actually started to incorporate more of those vertical elements, I feel like that completely changed the look of my whole garden. Because, you know, when we plant plants in similar sized pots, it kind of looks like a flat plant display rather than a garden. So adding height and dimension is really important because it elevates the whole space. And I have recently posted a video where I share with you 10 creative ways on how to add vertical interest to your balcony or container garden. So to not repeat myself once again, I will leave you the link to that video in the description box and at the end of this video so that you can check it out if you wish. Alright, so I hope that you found some helpful and useful tips in today's video. As per usual, don't hesitate to ask me any additional questions you may have in the comments section. Happy gardening!